Refugees, asylum seekers, and the people flee from their homes to escape the crisis, seek secure human rights, and relieve the hell of compel or prosecution. Consulting the coverage of UK asylum seekers, many of which choose to simply row their boats to go across the channel between the UK and France. The boats are the only means to possibly be noticed by the UK. Still, after July 2023, when a stricter Illegal Migration Act came into reality, there have been no grants of asylum to anyone who arrived by the small boat on or after this date. Does the refusal solve the issue or procrastinating in another way? Regarding the official statistics, the number of asylum seekers in the UK has significantly risen in recent years. Trespassing through the channel is a rising concerning ways to get into the boundaries illegally. Nevertheless, this is the most effective, simple, and affordable method for asylum seekers to get the narrow opportunity and lasting hope. In this graph, we can see the breakdown of asylum seekers' origin. Take the most distinctive ones as an example. Afghanistan's territory has long been occupied by the terrorist group Taliban. In the past, the bordering country Pakistan adopted the most of them. However, the new home state Pakistan utilized a campaign called the Illegal Foreigners Repatriation Plan to turf Afghans out in 2023. Countries like Sudan, Syria, and Eritrea have unstable political status, making asylum seekers flooded out of these countries.
Fifth, we will pass new laws to stop small boats, making sure that if you come to this country illegally, you are detained and swiftly removed.
That's what the Prime Minister committed in 2023. Then, the UK intended to send the asylum seekers to Rwanda, an East African country that is thousands of miles away from their origin destination. The Human Rights Court of Europe and many advocate groups tried to explain it was just banishing the poor, but the government insists on arranging the plan whatsoever. The notorious act passed in the parliament but was announced dead and buried 2 months later. The questionable attitude and ignorance of human rights explain that the UK is overburdened with refugees, failed to manage its capacity, and ignored these applicants as humans. During the application process, life in the UK is by no means easy. The application takes time, but the real issue is it usually takes too long. Nearly 2/3 had been waiting for more than a year. During the initial acceptance, the asylum seekers weren't allowed to work and only lived on financial aid of €7 each day. The immigrants are usually discriminatively treated, exacerbating social hatred of minorities and creating potential humanitarian tragedies. All the awareness pushes us to concentrate on how to use a political approach to encounter the crisis.
Research questions and objectives of this study. The UK's tightening of asylum policies, like the Illegal Migration Act, aim to protect national security but may also hinder refugee integration by limiting access to jobs, education, and social participation. The study explores how these policies impact social inclusion and political engagement. We explore whether limited access to policy discussions and community consultations affects refugees' visibility, belonging, and trust, and whether international practices offer solutions to enhance stability and political identity. Countries like Germany and Canada balance security and integration by incorporating structured political engagement. The study examines whether similar models could help the UK improve refugee integration. To answer these questions, this study has clear research objectives. We will analyze how UK policies affect refugee integration, particularly in employment, education, and social support, to identify key barriers and challenges. The studies evaluate whether political exclusion reinforces social isolation and whether indirect participation, such as consultations, could improve integration and trust. By comparing Germany, Canada, and the UK, we aim to identify effective strategies that promote both security and refugee inclusion. Finally, we propose practical policy solutions, including the refugee integration and political engagement incentive system, a framework to foster civic participation while addressing security concerns.
I'll outline the research methodology to analyze UK policies on refugee integration and participation. This study employs 3 methods to understand refugee social integration. We'll use surveys to identify barriers and attitudes, interviews to explore personal experiences, and policy analysis to assess long-term impacts and compare international practices. Now, let's break down data collection methods. Surveys will identify challenges in employment, education, and political participation. In-depth interviews will explore daily life impacts and gather feedback from policymakers and NGOs. Lastly, policy analysis will evaluate refugee policies through official reports and international comparisons. Focusing on survey research, we plan to survey 500 to 1,000 refugees and 1,000 British residents. Refugee surveys will examine social integration, employment, and political participation, while public surveys will capture attitudes and support for integration policies. Next is in-depth interviews. These interviews with 20 to 30 refugees and 10 to 15 government and NGO representatives will explore challenges in housing, employment, and social support while providing insights on current policies. Now for policy and archival data analysis. We will examine UK policy documents and compare them with policies from countries like Germany and Canada. They will help us identify effective strategies to improve refugee integration outcomes. Moving on to data analysis methods, we apply both quantitative and qualitative techniques, regression and demographic comparisons with identified integration factors, while qualitative analysis will highlight interview themes and examine political narratives. Finally, for ethical considerations, participants' data will be anonymized, and informed consent will be obtained. Refugees can skip sensitive questions and assess psychological support. The study will remain neutral, focusing solely on policy effectiveness. With the methods established, the budget is allocated to ensure the study's successful execution. Our budget is allocated across 6 key categories to ensure the success of our research project. First, research staff costs account for £155,000. This covers essential roles such as the primary investigator, 2 research assistants, a data analyst, and a qualitative research specialist to ensure efficient data collection and analysis. Next, £25,000 is allocated to incentives for participants. These funds encourage participation in surveys, interviews, and focus groups, which are critical for gathering comprehensive data. Travel expenses total £27,000 and cover field research and participation academic conferences to share insights and gather feedback. We have allocated £12,000 to equipment and materials, which includes questionnaire printing, recording equipment, and data analysis software. Miscellaneous costs are budgeted at £11,000 to cover cloud storage, ethics review fees, and community engagement initiatives. Finally, a contingency fund of £20,000, representing 8% of the budget, is reserved for unforeseen expenses to ensure flexibility and continuity throughout the project. With the budgets allocated for each phase, we can now turn to a timeline to outline how we'll execute the project step by step, ensuring timely and effective completion. We'll begin by exploring theories on refugee social integration and political participation, such as social capital and identity theory. We'll also review UK refugee policies and compare practices in Germany and Canada to identify gaps in research and policy. Next, we'll conduct public opinion surveys and in-depth interviews with refugees, government officials, and NGOs, while collecting official data on refugee employment, social participation, and access to services. Through quantitative and qualitative analysis, we'll identify factors influencing integration and participation, leading to the design of the refugee integration and political participation incentive system tailored to the UK context. Finally, we'll summarize our findings, provide policy recommendations, and disseminate results through academic journals and conferences to ensure practical impacts and broad application. Our research proposes a policy platform where governments can refine asylum policies before implementation. By integrating legislative drafts, research, and refugee inputs, this system ensures transparent and evidence-based policy making. Making policies traceable fosters communication, reduces social tensions, and improves effectiveness. This system impacts key areas. Everyday life improves as refugees integrate through cultural exchange and community engagement. Policymakers and government gain real-time feedback for better, more transparent policies. Asylum seekers receive structured participation channels to voice needs and access resources. Other research versatility expands as this model aids public engagement studies. Social issues like polarization and extremism are mitigated by fostering inclusion and reducing tensions. The system established multi-level participation channels, including community forums and digital platforms, enabling refugees to influence local policies. Participation rewards and recognition encourage civic engagement through certificates, education, and job training. These measures build trust, support integration, and strengthen economic stability. This research aids governments and policymakers by providing data-driven policy recommendations, reducing conflicts caused by ineffective policies. Policy transparency and public acceptance improve as both refugees and locals participate in decision-making, fostering trust and social consensus. Key applications include media and education reforms to counter stereotypes and promote inclusivity. Crime and extremism prevention strengthens by fostering belonging and reducing exclusion. Optimizing public services ensure better resource allocation in education, healthcare, and welfare, improving efficiency and satisfaction. This study advances political science and sociology by addressing gaps in refugee participation research. Comparative international research provides insights from UK and European models, promoting cross-border policy innovation and global social integration. These insights lead to the study's final conclusions on policy and society. Core research questions and objectives. This research examines how UK policies impact refugee social integration and political participation, asking whether they promote inclusion or deepen marginalization. By analyzing legislative measures and their effects, it aims to identify pathways for policy improvement. The findings will offer evidence-based recommendations to enhance integration, while balancing national security, contributing to more inclusive and stable society. The importance of the research and the grant's key role. This study examines refugee social integration and political participation in the UK, filling gaps in policy and academic research. It provides empirical data and policy recommendations to reduce social divisions and enhance societal stability. The grant will ensure high-quality data collection and analysis, support collaboration with policymakers and community organizations, and enable the research to have a tangible policy impact rather than remain purely academic. This is not just an investment in research, but a crucial opportunity to promote social inclusion and sustainable development.